Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. And in the next half an hour, we'll be seeing what's making the headlines with Whitehall editor from The Guardian, Rowena Mason, and PR consultant Alex Dean. We'll be speaking to them both in just a moment. But first, let's see what's on some of those front pages. The Telegraph is leading with a report on hundreds of miles of overhead cables and pylons being fast-tracked to help Britain meet its net zero targets despite public opposition. Meanwhile, there's fury over taxpayer money being used to fund organisations fighting plans to remove asylum seekers to Rwanda. That's according to the Sunday Express. And the Daily Star features a piece on Britain's impending invasion of alcoholic hornets this summer, reporting that boozed-up hornets are set to rampage barbecues across the country. The Sunday Mirror's leading with an exclusive on the Stephen Lawrence murder. Rock legend Sir Mick Jagger is set to marry long-term girlfriend Melanie Hamrick at the age of 79, according to this splash on the Sunday People. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you're watching us. And we're joined tonight by Whitehall editor at The Guardian, Rowena Mason, and PR consultant Alex Dean. Great to have you both with us. Thanks so much for joining us. A real mix of stories on tomorrow's front pages, but certainly one story that's going to feature a lot is what is going on in France. And the Sunday Telegraph is talking about President Macron deploying special forces to deal with these rioters. Rowena, certainly it seems to be a problem that he has not got a grip of yet.
Yes, that's right. The rioting's entered its fifth night, and Macron has got to be seen to do something more to address some of the criticisms that the police have levelled at him, and the public seeing this violence on the streets.
Yeah, and Alex, your thoughts on this story? Certainly, you know, protests are nothing new in France, but it certainly does feel rather different, this one. They have seen these sorts of riots before with simmering tensions with the police for decades now.
You're absolutely right, but this is the worst for about 20 years. Of course, the French have a different tradition to civil unrest to us, and whilst we get angry with our government quite often, we seldom go out and set fire to our town hall or things like that, which have been happening for a little while. But this is taking it to a whole new level. And Louis XVI in 1788 found out that it's not always a good idea to put troops on the streets. It led to the collapse of the monarchy in France and his own execution. You know, there are reasons that we don't generally use armed forces for policing operations. It's because the army is for fighting. And when you put the army on the street, it tends to do what it does. So it has to be a real extreme when this happens. But many people will be looking at what's happening in France and saying, if not now, then when? Because it seems to be going on. And I can't help but notice one of the latest things that happened is the raid of a gun store. It was a shop that held a number of firearms, which have now found their ways into the hands of looters. So it really does look bad in France at the moment.
Yeah, and Rowena, certainly a number of social issues at the root of all this. And President Macron has actually abandoned that trip to Germany tomorrow to now stay at home and try and deal with it.
That's right. This period of rioting was kicked off because of an incident where police shot and killed a young man in a car. And this has inflamed racial tensions, social tensions. It is reminiscent in some ways of the 2011 riots that we had in the UK that were triggered by the police killing of Mark Duggan. So there's a lot that Macron's got on his plate here. He's going to have to address some of the deep-seated unhappiness that many of the young people who are going out and rioting are expressing, at the same time as trying to get the situation under control and deal with the fear that people are feeling, because areas of Paris and spreading in other areas across France, they're seeing towns and cities being looted and and vandalised. So it's really a very difficult situation. And as you say, Macron's had to change his plans, not go to Germany, and try and get this under control.
Yeah, and Alex, a final thought from you on this story before we move on. Certainly, a lot of these social issues and simmering tensions are in the banlieue, the suburbs, as they're known, of these cities in France, where the French government built this, these big expanses of social housing after World War II, and certainly they're now home to a lot of communities of immigrants or second, third generation immigrants who just feel that they don't have the same opportunities, and police tolerance certainly seems to be a real problem in terms of brutality.
Well, you've put it very well. And of course, I say on the face of it, because there will be an investigation and we'll learn more facts about it. But on the face of it, what the policeman did to trigger this was absolutely unforgivable. I mean, just disgusting behaviour, it would seem, from the facts that we know so far. But this is a deep-rooted and deep-seated issue. It's not about one incident. It's long-standing, and it's about a problem that the French have had culturally and in assimilating people that have come to their country. It was under our last government, when Britain was being told it had something to learn from the French, that Peter Mandelson, then in government, said, if the French social model is so great, why are the banlieues on fire? And that was a full 2 decades ago. This kind of social unrest, I think, for all that we get wrong in the United Kingdom, can make us look at our society and think we've done something rather better in assimilating newcomers than our neighbours. But that said, my gosh, we've got to wish them well and hope they get a handle on this.
Yeah, and certainly that the rise of the far right has not helped with these tensions in France. Let's move on now. Front page of the Sunday Express, Rowena, their headline leading with the controversial Rwanda policy, saying that the Rwanda scheme is being foiled by £1.5 billion of taxpayers' money. Elaborate, please.
Well, what it's saying is it's done a toss-up of some of the funding that charities who are supportive of the legal challenge against the government have received from the taxpayer. But what some of those charities and other critics of the policy might say is that their challenge has actually been vindicated. Judges have found against the government and found that it breached Article 3 of the ECHR, and that it wasn't a safe move to send asylum seekers to the country. So there is an argument on the other side that this legal challenge has been justified as the country tries to figure out whether this policy was within the law or not. And of course, there'll be a challenge. The government's fighting it very hard. And Rishi Sunak has staked his premiership on it, partly because he said that one of his 5 priorities is to stop small boats coming across the channel. At the moment, it doesn't look very likely that he's going to manage to achieve this before the next election.
Yeah, and Alex, it's interesting, isn't it, that even given the ruling at the Court of Appeal this week that shipping migrants off to Rwanda would be unsafe, it seems the government are going to pursue this to the Supreme Court. And it's not just an unpopular policy, but certainly for many it doesn't seem practical either that they're pursuing this headline policy that perhaps may never, ever happen.
Well, part of the point, I think, the difficulty that you've seen as a result of these challenges means that the government is incentivised to continue to pursue it. Because if you scrap it and go back to stage 1, if you go right back to step 1, then it's all too plausible that the next thing you put forward will face a series of challenges and hurdles as well. But I must say my own view is that challenges like this from the dear old Express are rather misplaced, actually. This is what the courts are for arbitrating and hearing disputes and adjudicating on what the law says. And if a political party, if a government doesn't like what the court has ruled about what the law currently is, then if you've got the ability to change the law in Parliament, if you've got the strength and the majority to put a new law in, then you should change that law. It's really, I think, misplaced to criticise the court for arbitrating on discussions and ruling on what new policies are and whether or not they are lawful. That's really what the courts are for. And in my view, I suppose, too, in the end, I'd look at this decision and say it's a classic example of where the government should appeal, well within its rights to appeal. It was a split decision from the Court of Appeal, Lord Chief Justice going one way, his colleagues going the other. That's exactly when the Supreme Court should be called upon to give its ruling. But for heaven's sake, let's not say that because lawyers sometimes give opinions you don't like, we shouldn't have them. In the end, the rule of law is there to protect all of us.